Good morning, it's Lisa with Lisa Heal Yourself, and today I want to talk about an important topic, which is the difference between TRE, otherwise known as trauma releasing exercises, and the emotional healing work, the inner child work, the emotional inner child healing work, and inner healing work that goes along with healing trauma. So somebody has brought up a question from one of my videos, which is explaining how exactly to do TRE videos. And if you haven't, or exercises, and if you haven't seen that video, please go check it out. It walks you through, how to do it from beginning to end. But somebody mentioned there a really good question that I thought I would take the time to answer. And they said, how exactly do you target specific trauma when you're doing these trauma releasing exercises? How do you, go to that moment in your past or that thing that you have trauma around, and how exactly is this going to target that? And I thought that was a super, super important question, because the answer is that you cannot target trauma when you're doing these trauma releasing exercises. So then people would say, well, what's the point in doing them? Like, if you can't target the trauma, what is the point? And how do you target the trauma? So that's what we're going to get into today. I hope it's going to be super helpful for you. Okay, so what is trauma? I think it's important that we actually identify what is trauma. I feel that trauma is something that happened to you, that impacted you in a negative way. And it happened to you, and because it happened to you, your life never went back to the same afterwards. So if something affected you so deeply that your world changed as a result, I mean literally something shifted in you, the way you perceive the world and yourself in it is no longer the same, right? Because you went through this experience, because some people are like traumatized by certain things and other people aren't. But I do think it's something deep enough. It has to be something that happened to you that's deep enough that you can't shake off afterwards. And you can't just go back to normal and perceiving the world in the normal, safe, loving way that you'd once viewed it. It is now shifted for you. The world is a different place, a darker place, a scarier place. And life didn't come back together as you know it. So sometimes something can happen to you that's terrible, that's awful, that you see as, that really affects you in a negative way, but you kind of work through it, you understand it, and life ends up going back to normal. It feels normal, you feel normal, your relationships are the same, the way you view your world view is the same. But when it's trauma, when it is true trauma, whatever you've been through, whatever experience you've had, has really shaped your world and changed your worldview. It's changed it. You're no longer the same person. You no longer view the world in the same way. And life just didn't slip back to normal for you. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about trauma. And so when we're trying to heal trauma, what we're actually trying to heal is, how can we get life to go back to normal for us again, right? How do we feel normal again? Safe in the world, happy, loved, secure, whatever it was that you felt before, that changed. Because sometimes your worldview shifts and changes, but it doesn't make you feel unsafe or unloved or unhappy or whatever. You've had a fundamental change in a positive way. But trauma is when you've had a fundamental change in a negative way. So a lot of times when we're healing trauma, we're thinking that we're needing to heal something in the past that happened to us. But in actuality, we actually need to heal right now in the present, the way we view the world, the way we see the world, the way we feel in the world. And we want to shift that back to how it used to be, or to something even better, right? So we're trying to transform the trauma, to work through the trauma so that we can come out the other side. So when there's trauma that needs to be healed, you're stuck in there. You've never come out the tunnel to the other side. So you're going through a train tunnel, you're stuck in the middle somewhere, your life is continuing, and you've never come out the other side. You've never transformed it, you've never come through it, and you've never now been able to live your life in a new and more positive way because of what happened to you, right? You're stuck in the tunnel, and that's what trauma is. So that's really what we're trying to heal at a fundamental level. So some people have really horrific things happen to them, and they're able to heal that trauma, meaning they're able to integrate what happened to them in such a way that they're able to accept it, forgive, whatever it is that they have to do. When they're in the tunnel of the darkness, when that terrible thing happens to them, they're able to somehow see it as separate, as a thing that's happened. And when they come out of the trauma, when they come out of the experience, when it's no longer happening, and when they felt their emotions and been able to resolve it, their world goes back to normal in the fact that they're not living their world, they're not living from that incident. They're not living their life from that incident. They're living their life how they always live their life. So if someone's been raped, right, and they've gone through what they've gone through, they've experienced what they've experienced, and it's, yes, when they think about that event, it's terrifying, but they don't live every minute of every day from that moment, from that tunnel, from being trapped in that tunnel. But another person who was raped, their world never shifts back to normal. Everything they do now is from that event. Their worldview comes out of that event. So they walk down the street every day wondering if they're going to be raped. Every decision they make is from that point of view. So they don't have another point of view. That becomes the strongest worldview for them. And it's the one in which their life can't move forward from, because every decision and everything that they do in their life, comes from that. Or if someone's lost someone close to them, lost a spouse, right? Some people are able to grieve, to integrate that, to know that that's sad, to feel those emotions, but to be able to move on and live their life still with their own point of view intact, like that the world's a safe place, they're going to be okay. They have lots of friends and family. There's other things that they can go to. Eventually, I'm not saying the next day for any of these traumatic experiences, but I'm saying eventually their world slips back to normal in the sense that they still view the world. Their worldview hasn't shifted. Every decision that they make in their life isn't from the point of loss and grief and losing that person. But the person who, has lost their spouse or lost their mother, and is in that grief trauma and can't let it go, is literally hasn't come out the other side of the tunnel. Every decision that they make in this world is from the point of view, my mom's not here to experience it with me. My partner's not here to see this. It's carried forth. So it's really about, can we come through these terrible events that happen to people and us in life as human beings? And some things are worse than others. So it's a scale, really, of how bad was it that happened to you? How much affected it? How much did it affect you? And then the big thing is, how much did it change your worldview? You weren't able to put the pieces back together. And this is what's called fragmentation. So if you haven't seen my video on fragmentation, this is a really good spot to pause and go back and watch that video. Because what happens is, without getting into so much detail, is that parts of us fragment in the trauma, meaning your actual self, your identity, literally breaks, shatters, as if you drop a plate on the floor and it breaks. And our job now is to put that back together, right? So that we can move forward and integrate the pieces of ourselves that have broken apart and piece them back together so that we can move forward, and that our worldview can feel safe again, can feel good again, so that we can move forward in life rather than be stuck. So trauma is really about being stuck. It's not about the event. It's that the event had us get stuck in our own lives, in our own feelings, in our emotions, in our thoughts, and especially in our worldview, right? Because we have thoughts, we have feelings, we have emotions. So all of these really are contributing, right? And when we feel stuck, when we can't move past, when we're not able to integrate, that's when we're stuck. So that's when these different therapies come into place. Because really what therapists are trying to do when they see somebody who's experienced trauma, they're trying to help them move forward. So there's a lot of different techniques in order to move forward. And that's where many of these different ones come in. You know, inner child work, emotional healing work, journaling, talking, counseling, right? We have integrative work. We have, then people go to the body, right? There's a lot of somatic experiencing work, and that is also what TRE is, the trauma releasing exercises and things that you can do with your body to release stress and trauma. So there's a whole pile of things, but we have to keep in mind, first and foremost, that the way we heal trauma is by calming down our central nervous system, allowing our body to feel safe, putting ourselves back together in a way that we're integrated enough that we feel whole enough as a person again, that we can come through the tunnel, that we can come out the other side and we can begin to live again, not from the traumatic point of view, not from that event's point of view in this world anymore, but from ourselves, our real souls, our real, what we want in this life and how we want to see the world and how we did see the world and how we can use our experience to see the world in that way again or in a better way or learn from our lesson and grow, right? How we can transform that experience so that we can move forward, because it's all about moving forward. Okay, so we're really going to get into it in this next piece. So if you have any questions here, just pause the video, go back and watch some videos on fragmentation, and then we'll move forward. So we all know that we have kind of like 3 different parts of ourselves, or 3 bodies really to ourselves. And we have our thinking selves, our emotional, our feeling selves, right? And our physical selves, our physical body. So we can use all 3 parts of ourselves to integrate healing, because sometimes trauma is mostly stuck in our brains, in our thinking selves. It's a thinking, mostly it's a thought pattern. It's thinking and it's patterns, right? Sometimes the trauma gets caught in our emotional body, in our emotional heart, right? In all those feelings of grief and loss and abandonment and self-hate and all of these feelings, right? It can get trapped in there. It can ruin the feelings, the way we see the world in feelings, right? So there's thoughts, there's feelings, and then there's the physical body. And sometimes it can traumatize our physical body. It can express itself through the physical body in headaches, pain, right? Different diseases and conditions. And this, when people have chronic illness, a lot of it is because the trauma is stuck in their physical body, right? The expression, it has changed their physical body somehow. So there, as we know, nothing's separate. So our thinking mind, our emotional body, and our physical body, although they're separate and we can work with them in different ways, we're really all one. And we're looking to integrate our mind, our body, and our spirit, and our physical body back together as a whole, so that we can feel integrated again, so that we can feel whole again, right? And then we can move forward and learn to live our life again. So this is why there are so many modalities to heal trauma and why it can be so confusing. Because some therapists, and I've done them all, so I understand mostly all of them. I mean, I don't know if there isn't one that I haven't done. There might be, because there are so many. But really, they fall into categories. We're working with the body to release trauma, and a lot of that is somatic experiencing. We're working with the emotions. A lot of that is inner emotional work, inner child work, right? Parts work. So you can look at my video on parts work, right? We're working with our emotions. A lot of things get stuck in the emotions. I mean, it really does all come down to emotions in the end. Even the physical body and the thinking body are manifesting that way, right? With people with looping thoughts, with fearful thoughts, with anxiety thoughts, with thoughts of depression and anxiety and looping and chronic OCD and all of these conditions. Their thoughts are, it's getting stuck in the thought body, right? The thinking body. So trauma gets stuck sometimes in different parts more often. It can get stuck in your thinking, it can get stuck in your emotions, or it can get stuck in your body. But often what happens with something that's very traumatic is it's all one, and it's hard to tell the difference. And so we really need to do work in all three areas. So, okay, so let's talk about the different ways that we can release trauma and what they mean and how we can focus them on what we're experiencing or what our problems are. Okay, so essentially, how does trauma work in the body? Like, how do these three bodies work? So as we know, we all think, we all have thoughts, and that's where it starts, with thoughts. We may interpret an event or an experience or a relationship or something that happened to us in a certain way through thoughts, okay? Thoughts always end up, if we can't work it out, if we can't heal the trauma in our thoughts always inform your emotions, your emotional body, your emotional heart, how to feel. So thoughts will eventually, your feelings will follow your thoughts, and you will eventually feel if your thoughts are poor, if your thoughts are bad, if your thoughts are fearful and scared and grief, and you're living in trauma and you're replaying events and you have anger and you feel all these things in your mind, thoughts will eventually turn into negative feelings in the body. And these feelings, these emotions in the body inform the actual physical body. It will actually take the neurochemicals of the feelings, they will go through the brain, and they will be directed out into the physical body, and that is how we get physical illness. So our thoughts turn to emotions, turn to the actual cells in our body. The firing of the neurons will tell the cells in our body what to do and how to be. And so that's why people with chronic illness and chronic pain and chronic suffering, it's the last stop for them, because their thoughts have turned to emotions that have now turned to manifesting in physical symptoms in the body. So we know that trauma is stored in the body, and we know it comes from thoughts and emotions, and it informs the body how to feel, how to react, and where to send the neurons, so that we either feel pain or we don't feel pain, we have this disease or we don't have this disease. So we're really creating our life based on our own thoughts, feelings, emotions, right? So we do have to be able to work through this trauma. And we like, and I like, and therapists like, to go back to the core. They always talk about going back to the core. So if you're able to feel your feelings, and you're able to talk about your thoughts, and you're able to see this trauma clearly, this will work. We can do a lot of therapy here. If your trauma, if you have been fragmented, right? If the trauma was so incredibly painful that you had to split a part of you off in order to keep surviving, to keep living, and you were never able to get that part of yourself back, if major parts of yourself have been fragmented off in order to survive, a lot of times we're not able to access those parts. We're not even able to feel our feelings. We're not able to, sometimes people can't even remember their trauma. So there's a lot of things that happen in the body's attempt to protect you and keep you safe. But when we can't feel our feelings and understand our thoughts, we're lost. We're stuck in this trauma, deep in this trauma, and we feel as though there's no way out. And it's not until we can learn how to feel our feelings, right? Feel those feelings and integrate them back in and send new messages to our body, new messages. And this takes a lot of work. This is breaking patterns work and law of attraction work. There's a lot of different pieces that go into this. But first and foremost, if you can't remember the trauma, if you can't feel your feelings, if you can't allow yourself or parts of your personality to come back because they're so terrifying to you at this point, because you've lost them, you've lost pieces of yourself, then sometimes therapists will go to body work, right? They will say, try shaking therapy, right? TRE therapy, somatic experiencing therapy, right? Dance therapy, yoga therapy. There's a lot of different therapies that move the body and help to dislodge trauma in general, right? Because the feeling is that you are stuck, and you feel trapped, and you feel stuck, in this traumatic experience and you're having problems moving forward. Some people lose their voice, they lose their feeling, they lose their emotions, they lose parts of themselves, right? And this is because we're stuck. And we need a way, like animals in the wild will shake. They will shake these things off. They will flap their wings, right? This is the foundation of TRE. So if you haven't seen that video, go back and watch the video that I've created on TRE, which just explains it and shows you how to do it. If you want more information, then go to a registered TRE therapist or something, and they can, describe it more in more detail. But the idea of it is that we're loosening the body. We're loosening on a physical level without having to talk, without having to relive it, without having to use our thoughts and our emotions and all these pieces that are too complicated and too hard for us at this present time, that we might just need to cry. We just might need to shake. We might just need to scream. We might just need to do things with our body that release the trauma in such a way that we feel that we can be calm enough, come back to neutral enough, get through the tunnel enough. Like after you've had a really good cry or a really good shake, or something has happened and you've used your body to sort of get that emotion out, even though you haven't worked through your feelings or your thoughts on that issue, you come to a spot in your body where your body feels better. Your body feels more relaxed. Your body feels more willing now to go in and to do the work, to think about what's happened, to process your feelings, to process your emotions. So I consider TRE not an end-all be-all therapy. I consider it a good starting place for those who are really lost in traumatic suffering, right? Because something that's happened to them has shifted their world so much. They no longer feel the same way. They no longer are the same person. And they can't express it. They can't work through it in their emotions. We're having trouble reaching, the parts of them, and they don't feel safe. And so doing some of these therapies, these physical therapies, can remind our body to take over rather than our mind. Because sometimes our mind lies to us. It tells us thoughts that aren't true. And sometimes our feelings are too big for us to feel. They're too much in the moment. If we were to feel all of that at once, we fear, now it never does and would destroy you, but we fear they're so big. They're too much for us to handle. We're so afraid of feeling the full feeling that we have trapped in our body that we literally hold it in. We hold these feelings inside us deeply. On a subconscious level, you don't even know you're holding them, but you're holding them so tight. Your body, your subconscious is holding them in an attempt to keep you safe. It really is holding them deep down, sometimes so deep down that people don't even know they're there. So using the physical expressions, shaking, crying, screaming, doing things like in nature that animals would do on a physical level, where we're not using our higher thinking, our prefrontal cortex, and we're not having to go in and use our thinking and our feeling body. We can stay on the physical body. We can really allow it. We hold a lot of tension in our body, and we're trying to release this physical tension that's being held in by this huge overwhelming emotion that we're afraid to let out. Right? So sometimes we need to cry or scream or shake or do something natural. And these are what these therapies can do for us. So they're general for people who are very stuck and can't access what they need to be accessed and are feeling overwhelmed in the moment, overstimulated, over emotional. It can soothe really the body, and it can help the body to feel safe in a way that you're calmer, your nervous system settles down. You go from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system. Your body can start to heal on a physical level. And when your physical body settles to the point where it feels like it has released some of this tension, which is the trauma that you're holding, we're now able, a little more able, just like a child who's having a fit on the ground, who's having a total fit and meltdown. Now is not the time to go in and to rationalize, to talk it out with them, to do talk therapy. Now is not the time to explore their feelings or how that made them feel. Now is the time to let them scream and cry and kick and have the tantrum. They will release what's in their body, what is needing to be released. And when that's released, and TRE is a safe way that you can release stored trauma in the body. So after that is through, after the child is finished with their tantrum, they're finished with their crying, screaming, shaking on the floor, they will often be in a calmer place where they can truly hear you talk it through now, or ask them to feel their emotions. How did that make them feel? Can we work through it on a feeling level? So TRE, to the person who asked this question, does not target a specific trauma that happened to you, but rather it helps to release generalized tension and trauma that is stored in the body and put you in a place that you're able to now refocus and work through it. And maybe you don't need to work through it. I mean, maybe that was all that child, for instance, needed, was to throw the tantrum, to kick and scream on the floor, to shake their body, to flap however they need to do. And then they return to normal on their own and they just go about their day. They don't even need to process it. They don't even need to talk through it. They don't really even need to think about their emotions because their emotions have been resolved because their trauma has been played out physically. It's been expressed, right? Through the physical body. But still, sometimes it benefits us and the child needs more, right? We need to be sat with, to be heard, to be listened to be felt, to feel these feelings, to know what to do with them. So, and this is where inner child work comes into play, and emotional healing and the trauma work that you really need to go in and do. Because if the child keeps having these tantrums that keep helping, but we're not really going in and we're trying to change the emotions the child is having, the way they're processing it, the way they're feeling, why this is happening to them, right? What they need that they're not getting, where they feel afraid, scared, angry, betrayed, where they feel abandoned, right? Where they need love, where they need to feel safe and comforted. Your body is looking for ways to feel these things: safety, comfort, love, acceptance. This is all the most important thing to your brain, your emotions, and your central nervous system and your entire body. So it looks for ways to find these things. So I feel it is super important. It's so important to do the inner emotional healing work, because remember, the thinking work, we can do thought work, we can do pattern breaking, we can do law of attraction work, we can try to change our thoughts. But if we don't get to the root of our emotions, remember, emotions, thoughts always lead to emotions. Emotions change our biochemistry. They change our body. They change our physical state. And so we eventually need to look at these emotions. And some of them are big feelings. And so feeling them little bits at a time can be helpful. But the process of feeling and never abandoning yourself when you feel, and sitting with yourself and loving yourself through it, giving yourself that sense of safety and unconditional, I'm here for you, I love you, is what needs to happen in order for you to come out the other side of the tunnel, as I like to call it, of trauma, and be able to have a worldview again that feels safe and loving, and you can continue through your life knowing that this bad thing happened, but it not affecting every decision in your life, it not changing you on such a fundamental level that you now can not live the way you once could. You can't act in the world the way that you once could. You're crippled in a way, you're shut down in a way, you're traumatized, your physical body is aching and breaking, and your mind no longer functions and works the same way. You shut everybody off. You can't open up. You can't love anymore. These are byproducts of trauma. These are byproducts of the trauma that we eventually need to feel, love ourselves through, and know that we're safe and loved, if only by ourselves. Oh, sorry, the wind. Sorry, I hope you can hear this because of the wind. Okay, so I want to stop here and do a little talk about the benefits of inner child work. So inner child work is essentially when we go back to a memory, we're revisiting a memory, a trauma, an experience, something that happened to us, and basically we alter the memory. And so it's about changing our blueprint. That's essentially what inner child work is. We go back, we feel what it was like in that moment, and then we change it by giving the child what they needed in that moment that they didn't get, right? So if you needed something from a parent or a loved one, or you needed something to be different or to get the kind of support or love that you needed in that moment, you go back and you envision it differently. You envision giving it to yourself, right? So this is essentially inner child work. It's going back to the memory, re-experiencing it in a more loving way with you as the parent there, giving what that inner child needs in the moment. So you can go back and watch any of my videos on inner child work on how to do that a little more in depth. However, that's essentially what it is. And the reason that's so important is changing our memories, changing our blueprint allows us to feel safe again in the world. It allows us to feel loved, to feel whole. We get what we need. We didn't get what we need. The outcome did not go our way. In this memory that we have, this trauma that we have, that we keep re-experiencing now, and has changed our life fundamentally. So by going back and doing this inner work, we're restructuring the very fiber of, our memories of how we experience life, and hopefully that helps us go forward and be able to now come back to get through the tunnel and to see life okay again, because we got what we need. We're giving ourselves what we need in that moment where we didn't get it the first time around. There's also fragmentation work and what I like to call feeling work, where, just feeling, a part of us has been fragmented off. An emotion is too big, too overwhelming. A part of our feeling, our personality, a part of ourselves has been cut off, and an emotion is so strong that we didn't fully feel it. Part of ourselves literally swooped in and saved us. Part of our personality saved us from feeling the full effect of that emotion at the time that the trauma was happening, because it knew it would be too much for us to feel. So part of ourselves pushed this other self down, and now we're no longer to experience or feel that certain part of ourselves, and we need to re-experience that. That's can be scary and overwhelming for some people because the emotion is so big. Now, emotions won't kill you. And a lot of practitioners will say this isn't safe. It's not safe to feel your feelings, and it is safe. Your feelings are safe. You are safe. The memory is in the past. As long as you're not in danger right now, then the feeling, the emotion can never be so strong that it can hurt you. What is hurting you is holding it in, holding it down, stuffing it down, because we fear that it's too big for us. And by holding it in, that's what's really hurting us. That's what's keeping us bound and sick and in this trauma. That's actually what's giving us the symptoms, the physical symptoms, the emotional symptoms that we can't stand and that we don't want to live with, and that are ruining and hurting our life. It's because we're so afraid of feeling this big, overwhelming emotion that will not kill you. The emotion will not kill you. Re-experiencing an emotion that you need to feel is something safe, right? Get yourself in a safe place. Don't do it in public. Don't do it in a place that you can be judged, or that you're alone, or a lot of people say, oh, you might not be safe. It might be so bad that you'll kill yourself if you feel that feeling. It's usually the opposite. It's usually so bad that if you don't feel that, let you feel yourself feel that feeling, that's when people commit suicide. That's when people, do horrible things, because they're repressing and suppressing the very parts of themselves that want and desperately need to be integrated back in. So this is the work that we feel our feelings. We allow ourselves to feel. We journal, we feel, we write, we excavate, right? We really work on expressing and feelings. Like we say, what emotion am I feeling right now? What is it? Let's sit with that grief. Let's sit with that abandonment. Let's sit with that overwhelm. Sit with that anger. Let's hear it. Let's hear it. It's trying to be expressed, and the more we push it down, the more parts of ourselves, the parts that think they're keeping us safe, are pushing these parts down. And they need to be a team. They both need to be heard. And so we need to integrate that part that can no longer be heard back with the part that's taken over our life in order to keep us safe. And so this is what that work is about, fragmentation work, right? The inner emotional work. It's very important work. Okay, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about physical trauma releasing exercises like TRE and other various forms of trauma releasing exercises that you can do within your physical body and the benefits of that. All right, before we get into talking a little bit about the benefits of TRE and other such practices, I want to say something very important, because I've had some backlash at points saying it's not safe practice TRE without a TRE certified practitioner. It's not safe to shake, or it's not safe to do the inner emotional work or the child work without a registered parts work. Sorry, I got cut off there. But what I want to say is I've had some backlash saying it's not safe to do inner emotional work or to do trauma releasing exercise work, shaking, or other modalities. It's not safe to do your feelings work or your parts work or your fragmentation work without registered therapists there, to help you. That is just not true. Okay, I have been to so many therapists, and it wasn't any safer doing it there than it was at home. In fact, the safer you can make yourself feel, the better. Sometimes being alone doing these exercises by yourself is one of the best gifts that you can give yourself, right? You can't run from yourself. You do not need a therapist to sit there and watch you either talk through your feelings, cognitive behavior therapy. You don't need them to watch you shake to make sure that you're going to be safe. You don't need them to be there while you're doing your journal work or your integration work or your parts therapy or feeling your emotions deeply or re-experiencing or going back and doing regression therapy and going back and reliving trauma. You do not need a therapist. And I want to make this very clear, because sometimes I find, therapists are there to make money. Therapists are great people, and therapists can be a supportive piece of the puzzle. They can be somebody there to basically be a witness for you. People want to be witnessed in their grief, in their abandonment, in their aloneness. It's not that they're keeping you safe somehow, but they can guide you. They can guide you gently. They can be a positive listening ear. They can be somebody who's a trusting source, a companion. You can feel connection, empathy. So there's a lot of great gifts that a great therapist can give you. But safety isn't one of them, okay? So I don't want you to fear. A lot of people fear, I'm going to re-traumatize myself. I'm going to do something horrible. I'm going to do it wrong and re-traumatize myself. That's not possible. The event has happened. You are living with that trauma every day. If you can't get past it, you're already re-traumatized. You can't re-traumatize yourself. What you can do is try to feel safe. You really need to know and believe, and I'm telling you, I want you to hear this, if nothing else in this video. Please feel safe to feel your own feelings. They're yours. They're inside you. They are feelings, no matter how ugly or how scary or how overwhelming they may seem. Feelings are not you. Feelings cannot hurt you. You are safe to feel your feelings. If it's overwhelming you, if you're at a point of a breakdown, please go watch my video, What to Do During a Nervous Breakdown. Okay, it's a helpful video. But, yes, if you feel that you're in danger and you need to keep yourself safe, then you will know that and you need to stop doing that exercise or keep yourself safe. But what I really want you to hear is that feelings can't hurt you. Emotions can't hurt you. What you experienced is over. It's in the past. It cannot hurt you. And stuffing it in keeping it held in is keeping you stuck. It's keeping you sick. The longer you shove it down because you're afraid of it. I mean, people with anxiety, with overwhelming anxiety conditions, are so afraid of feeling the anxiety. That's what they're reacting to. They're so afraid of the panic attack that they're creating panic attacks. You must face your overwhelming emotions. You must face the fear. You must face the anger. You must face the grief. You must face that feeling of abandonment and that feeling of feeling unloved. You must face them. You must feel them. You must go back and then retrain your mind. Put in new memories. Give yourself the love that you needed. You can be your own therapist in this session if you don't have money. I don't want to bash therapists. They're wonderful and they can be amazing, helpful guides. But I don't want you to think if I can't afford a therapist, I can't heal because it's too dangerous for me to do this work. It's not. It's not too dangerous for you to do this work, and you need to do this work. You need to know that you are safe, and you need to convince your own body and mind that you're safe with yourself, that you can love yourself, that you can give yourself the support you need, that you can be there for yourself, you can witness yourself, you can hear yourself, you can guide yourself, you can encourage yourself, you can ask yourself questions like, what did I need in that moment? You can guide yourself to give yourself what you need. And there's lots of great tools and resources on the internet. If you don't have the funds, if you don't have the money, because I know it's expensive trying to heal yourself, watch some of my videos, watch other videos, other people's videos, guiding you on how to do some of these exercises and techniques. And know that you're safe. The whole thing that you need to believe, the whole thing that your central nervous system needs in order to heal is a feeling of safety and love. So if you're in fear doing these, because people and therapists are telling you you can't do them on your own, they are doing damage to you. So do not see them, do not go to them. Go to people who make you feel safe. And if you can't afford them, make yourself feel safe. Your nervous system is looking for safety. It's looking for love. Once it feels safe and loved, you can come through the tunnel of trauma. You're able to reintegrate yourself back into the world once you feel safe and loved again. So know that there is no emotion that is too bad, too overwhelming, too powerful, too shameful to feel. Please know that until you turn and look at it and allow it, like a little child who wants to say terrible things and isn't a terrible person, it needs to speak, it needs to have its say. Until you allow it to say, I feel shameful, I feel ugly, I feel dirty, I feel lost, I feel alone, I feel abandoned, I feel so angry, I feel like no one loves me. Until you acknowledge what's living inside you, you can't move through it, you can't transform it. And the goal is not to just feel it forever. The goal is ultimately to transform it, to realize that it's not more powerful than you, that there's other parts of you that are caring and loving and have dreams and a future and goals and that can feel joy and experience things, and people who do care. And so we're building up this sense of safety, and we're building up this sense of self-love, really, where you can meet your own needs. And part of that is being able to guide yourself through this process. You can meet your own needs. You'll know when you're ready to take the next step, when you're ready to feel an emotion, when you're ready to integrate it, when you're ready to, how much you can journal, like what you can say, your meditation, you'll know when you're ready for these things. So you have a deep inner guide, a deep inner therapist within you. You have a deep inner knowing, and you can access that. And it's powerful. And so we are going to move on, but I just really needed to say this. Please don't think that you're somehow, it's so dark and shameful and scary, and your thoughts are so deep and dark and terrible and overwhelming that it's not possible to heal without a therapist, or it's dangerous, because that is just not the case. Okay, I lived it. I understand. I know. I thought about death every day. I didn't kill myself, right? Turn to look at what you're pushing down. Turn to look at the scariest thing. Turn and face it. Open your arms to it. Love it. Remind it that it's safe, that you're there for it, that you are here to help it feel safe and loved again in this world. That's truly what healing trauma is. At the core, that's what we need to do. We need to give this part of ourselves so much love and faith and understanding, and let it know that you are there for it. Unconditional there-ness with the thing that you're so afraid to look at because you're afraid it's going to swallow you whole, and it will not. It will not swallow you whole. Okay, so now we're going to get back to the original person's question, which was how does TRE, or how can TRE, trauma releasing exercises, help with specific trauma in the body, specific memories? And now you can see that my answer is that it can't. So the purpose of TRE, and I just want to get this straight, I'm not a TRE practitioner, but I love Peter Levine, I love David Berceli, I love somatic practitioners, I love the work of somatic experiencing. I love this work. I think it's really important. And the reason why it is important, and the reason why it can help, even though it can't target something specific, is because every time we're stuffing down, every time we're holding in trauma, holding in emotions, thoughts, and we're burying them, or they are subconsciously buried, right? Or we can't remember them, or they're so deep down that we're either suppressing or repressing them. We carry so much tension in the body, physical tension. It results, holding things in results, and trauma results in literal physical tension in our body. So if you've ever seen a dog shaking during a thunderstorm, right? Shaking, or you've ever seen an animal just tremor, go into these tremors, you've seen that that's how they're dealing with, and that's how they're releasing literally this tension that exists in the body. Tremors and shaking help to release tension, and it's just like any other trauma releasing exercises that you could do, like laugh therapy, or crying therapy, or laughing therapy, shaking therapy, screaming, right? Kickboxing, fighting. You could run. A lot of people do running therapy for anxiety therapy, right? So anything that's really going to induce that fight or flight, that natural system in the body, like running full out, will release trauma, will release stress. Tremoring, shaking will release stress. Screaming, crying, right? Fighting. Those natural impulse urges help us get out of fight or flight, because often trauma is not us being in fight or flight, because when we're in fight or flight, we're actually releasing trauma. When you're fighting something, you're releasing the trauma. When you're running, when you're fleeing, or shaking, or crying, or screaming, or doing any of these things, you're releasing the trauma that comes along with what you're experiencing. That's how animals do it in the wild, and that's how we do it too, but we're so embarrassed, so afraid, so worried about what other people think, and often these feelings and the thoughts get into thoughts and emotions that we store in our body that we can't quite figure out how to release. And so the physical releasing of this tension that we're holding can be helpful, just like a child having a total temper tantrum. They don't know what they're doing. Sometimes they kick, sometimes they cry, sometimes they scream, sometimes they shake, right? They're doing all of these things, and they're just basically releasing tension that's being built up in the body. And when that's released at the end of that temper tantrum, or at the end of whatever episode, and someone shakes or cries or screams or does whatever they naturally need to do, it's a natural reaction. It releases the tension that you're holding, and you often feel calmer. You feel safer. You naturally feel calmer and safer when you've come through the other side of running physically away from something, or shaking or tremoring, right? Crying, screaming, kicking. These natural impulses help us relieve the stress, and we end up feeling safer, calmer. The child visibly comes out of the temper tantrum smiling, laughing. So it helps to release tension that we're holding that we otherwise not be able to, sorry, I just dropped something, otherwise not be able to get to, right? By just looking at our feelings or talking about them, we're physically reenacting and getting that stress out. So I don't think alone that those can completely heal trauma, especially if we've already internalized it and we've compartmentalized it in our brain, and our brain does not want to let it go. Then we need to do more brain retraining exercises, healing the body with the brain. We really need to look at how we can stop patterns, change patterns, put in better patterns. You know, once the brain takes hold of something, it's often not just instinct anymore. And when we're looking at feeling our emotions, we need to feel those every time triggers arise in our life. There's a trigger that's coming up. It's an emotion we're holding from the past, and we need to let it go in present day, time. And so if you haven't watched my video that says how to heal your past right now, how to heal your past right now in the present, that's a really important video, because it's looking at all those triggers. Triggers are just reminders that we're holding tension and trauma in our body that we haven't dealt with yet. And so sometimes it can be a lot of work dealing with all that trauma that we have inside, and we need to do it in present time with the triggers that are coming up. So TRE is very important work. Somatic experiencing is very important work. Using our body to get rid of tension by any means: running, screaming, kicking, crying, laughing, tremoring, like all of these things, they're so helpful because the body can release without us having to think our way through it or feel our way through it. But we still need to feel and think our way through these things. We need to feel the feelings. We cannot heal trauma without looking at ourselves, without looking at the feelings that are screaming. They're screaming through your body. They're screaming through your emotions. They're screaming to be felt, to be witnessed, to be looked at, to be seen. So we will never be able to heal ourselves unless we turn towards them and face them. So it's also necessary to do the inner emotional work and then the inner child work, changing our memories. There's a lot of other things like EFT tapping and different therapies like that will go back and change memories, right? EMDR. There's a lot of therapies that are super useful, but what you really need to learn is that it's not overwhelming to heal trauma. We need to feel our bodies, we need to feel our emotions, and we need to feel our thoughts in our mind and change them. So yes, it's overwhelming, and yes, it takes work, and yes, you are safe to do this work on your own. Please don't let anyone ever tell you that you're not safe to do these therapies at home. You must do these therapies. You can't expect to go into a therapist's office and pay money once a week to be able to heal this. You're living with this every day, all the time. And so you need to be able to be your own therapist, to look inward, to do the work, to understand what trauma is, what your feelings are, what your emotions are saying to your body, what your mind is saying to your emotions. Where the stored tension is keeping you stuck and sick, and how we can release it. How can we release stored tension in the body and these stored beliefs that we're not good enough, that we're unlovable, that our worldview has changed and can never go back to how it is because everything's bad and unsafe now. These are beliefs that we need to change on breaking. So I hope I've answered this question. It's a useful therapy for the person who asked the question, and so is all of it. We really need to heal trauma on many levels, right? Especially if it's affecting your life on many levels. So, I'll see you in the next video, and I really, truly hope this has been helpful and a good explanation for you.